And then comes the business object. Now, this is very important part. Why? In the overview section, when I was discussing and I stated that as a tool, Workday has not allowed us, or Workday, has not given us any methodology which tells us what database they are using. They have not disclosed the, the middleware or the front end. So we don't know how that has been developed. We don't know the framework, nothing. But this is an application, right? So we need to store data. We need to retrieve data. So for that purpose, Workday has given a terminology, which is basically called as business objects. So these business objects play a very important role for storing and retrieving of data. So we can consider business objects as a table of a database. Now, when you consider anything as a table of a database, so what do you see in a table in a database? What do you find? So what happens here, guys, we have to understand when we are talking about a table. So table is a collection of organized data in the form of rows and columns. So you would have seen an Excel sheet, right? So what do you see in an Excel sheet, guys? You see a column, you see rows and columns. And when you have the data, first of all, you will have to define the column name, right? So in this column, I have to enter such kind of values. In column 1, I'll do this. Column 2, I'll do this. Column 3, I'll do this. And then below, when you try to fill in the details, it will be in the row, right? So let's say I have to build a report for the employees who has joined in last 1 month. Now, what are the options I would need? I would need their first name, their middle name, their last name, date of birth, date of hire, right? Which department they have started working, what was the previous salary, what is their new salary, right? So all those things I am capturing. So in those cases, what I will do, first of all, I'll put that columns. Column 1 will be for first name, 2 will be for middle name, 3 will be for last name, then gender, date of birth, all those things are in column. And whoever has joined in last 1 month, okay, all those data will be in rows. Clear? Now, this collection is basically a very basic collection, but it is in organized format. You are able to see that. And this is where your tables come into picture. So if you see this spreadsheet, it is a form of a table only, right? You have rows and you have columns. Similarly, when we go into a table, if a database, it will have the same kind of structure. You will have a column name and then the data will be below that, which will be in the form of rows. Now, if it is just like a table, as I stated, that business object is just like a table, which means it will have a table name, which means it will have a business object name. And then with that business object, you will have the column name as well, which is basically called fields. Okay. So if I have to go into a business object, there is a shortcut, guys, which I'm going to show it to you. Basically, this is the only way. And as I stated, I'm going to use this particular search box for doing everything. So if I have to go into a business object, I'll type here as BO. BO stands for business object. I'll put a colon and I'll type the name of the business object where I have to go. Okay. So the most important business object which is there in Workday is worker. Without worker, Workday is useless. There is nothing, right? So worker has the maximum number of fields. Along with that, you will have a lot of other information, right? Because everything is related with worker only. That's the reason why this application is called as Workday. Okay. So if I have to search it, I'll put BO colon and then I'll go ahead and put worker and hit enter. So once I hit enter, it will take me to that page where it will give me all the business objects which is related with worker. Okay. You see this business object and here is the name worker. So I'll click on it. Now this will take little time to load. as I stated, this is the most fundamental table of Workday, or you can say it is the foundation on which Workday is. So there will be lot of fields. It will be in thousands. Okay. And these fields are nothing, but it is column that you have in a table. You see, the number of field has gone to 4,283. So these many columns are there in this particular table, right? 4283. Now, within this section, if you see, this is also in a tabular format. You have the column name, field name, description, field source, field type, right? And these things we will study later. So it is very important for us to know when we have a field, right, which is a column of a table, why is this column or why is this field created? What is the use of it? Okay. And from where has this column come in? And what kind of value is it storing? All right. So when we talk about field, field has two parts. A standard field and a custom field. Standard fields are called as Workday delivered fields. So if you scroll it down, if you scroll it here, you will see it is Workday delivered, which means it's a field which has been given by Workday. And basically it is your a standard field which has been put here. And that's the reason it is called as Workday delivered. So this is Workday delivered. So there are two types of field that you will get, that, you know, from where is that source coming? So we have field source. So it is Workday delivered. Okay. Workday delivered means it's a standard field, standard column of the particular table. And then you see this option which says calculated. Wherever you see this option which says calculated, guys, understand that this is basically your custom field. So someone has created it for a specific purpose. So there is a complete chapter on this that we are going to cover, which is calculated field. And this field is created for some specific functions. Now, what are those functions? Why exactly have we created it? So when we say that we are creating a calculated field, the calculated field is something which helps us to perform some activity. For example, I have to write a formula, okay? And that formula will calculate the salary for all my department. So how much is the total amount that I am getting as a cost to my cost center? Okay, so I'll have to write a formula, and that on that formula, I will actually create a calculated field, which will be a form of arithmetic. And then I will add those other fields which I require, and that value will be the total cost which I am getting, right? So this is a kind of calculation. Let's say I have to extract some true or false value from particular condition. So there I will use true false function, right? So there are 30 to 40 functions that we have. I'll give you the list of functions when we go into the report chapter and the calculated fields chapter. There you will have to practice. I will pick up those complex ones which will be difficult to understand, but once you practice, you will be able to understand it very easily, right? So this is just like, as I stated, it's an overview. This is just for your understanding. All the things we will be configuring in chapter 9 when we talk about calculated fields. All right, so the next part is your field type. So field type is like, you know, an understanding of what kind of value this particular field is holding. Let's say first name. So when you have to put a type, what would you put in? That what kind of value it is holding, this particular field, first name. So guys, what happens if I have to create a table in any database? There is a command for that. Okay, that command is basically called as create table. Okay, And below that, you have to put the table name. Let's say I'm creating the name as employee. Okay. Then in an employee table, what are the fields that you will put in so that, everybody can enter the value? That field is basically your column name. So first name. Now I have put the name of the column, which is first name. What kind of value it is going to, hold? So they are going to hold character, right? They are going to hold a string value. So when you talk about ABCD, let's say the first name I have put it as Ravi and the last name is Sharma. So both have characters in that, right? ABCD that you see, RAVISHARMA, right? So all these are alphabets, characters. So the data type there becomes char. Okay. So Workday has I think 8 data types that are available. But data type is a terminology that is being used in database. Now, Workday is not a database, right? Workday is using a database. So what they have done is they have changed the terminology and they have kept that what is the field type. So if I say first name is a field. Now, what kind of value it is going to hold, that you will identify with the help of field type. Okay. So if I have to enter a text, okay, like I have to put the name as Ravi. So Ravi has all characters. So in Workday terminology, that field type will be text. So I'll show you somewhere or the other, you will see text. Just trying to find it, that if we get anything as text. You're not getting till now, but don't worry, we will get it. Because there will be some or the other, because it's worker. So I'm sure there will be first name, right? So let me show you that. You see this first name. Now, when I add a filter, all the fields will be gone and only one value will remain, which is your first name. Okay. You see, it is field type is text. Okay. Now, what does it say? This is the first name of the candidate. And this is Workday delivered, which means it's a standard field. Okay. And then you have text. So this is the meaning of field type. It becomes very important. Why it becomes important? If you don't use the right type of the value here, then you will not be able to basically perform the activity. So if I have a field name as first name, and if I put as data type as number, when I will type in Ravi, I'll not be able to save that data. It will give me an error that the type that you're putting is not the valid type, because it's a validation. If you have put that field type as numeric, then how can you put text in that? How can you put alphabets? How can you put character? That what is the field source? So from where has this field come in? Is it from Workday? Then it will be Workday delivered. If it's a custom field, which means someone like us would have created it, right? So that's the reason you will see the field source as either calculated, or you will see the field type as Workday delivered. All right. So calculated means it's a custom field. Workday delivered basically means your standard field. Now, what are the field type that is available in Workday? So there are 7 to 8. I don't have the exact number. I mean, we can write it down. What are the options available, and then we'll count it. The first one is numeric that you see here. Numeric, what does that mean? You can put any number. It can be in minus, plus, whatever you want to put in. Okay, you can do that. There is no limit as per the definition. Okay. Then comes text, where you put in the alphabets. You would write the name, right? Then you will use text. Then you have date. So when you use date, a kind of calendar, a drop down comes in where you have to enter the value. Let's say you have to put the date of birth, right? So Let's say someone has been, someone was born on, let's say, 10th of July 1990. Okay, so you will have to click on month, you'll have to select the month, select the year and the date. So that's a date fund. What I said up till now was there are two things, numeric and text, right? Then we have date field. What is a date field? What does it do? Let's say I have to enter the date of birth. Purpose, what I will do, I will have to go ahead and select my birthday, my month, and the year in the which I was born, right? So that is a kind of date I have to enter. Then there is also a kind of field type which is called as date and time, where we will be able to put the date, whatever the date we have, and then we will also be able to put the time. Let's say I have to run a report every day at 10 a.m. in the morning. Okay. So as you schedule your calls, right? If you have to send a calendar invite and you have to schedule a call, so what do? You put a date and then you put a time, right? And then automatically you will get an invitation there. So that is called as date and time. So we have understood numeric, we have understood text, we have understood date, we have understood date and time. Now you see this option which says multi-instance. Okay. This is a unique thing. You would not see this word everywhere in any other ERP tool. The name will be different, but you will have this kind of value for sure. Now what happens in this case? You will get a drop down. Okay. You will get a drop down, and in that drop down, let's say you have to select multiple values. You see a checkbox. Okay. So what that happens, let's say I'm searching job, and in the portal, I will say I'm looking job into various cities. If I'm in India, let's say I'm searching job in Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore. Okay. I've given you 3 examples, Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore. I will check these 3 values from that list. There could be 200 cities in that list. Out of that, I'm just checking 3 values. What does that mean? That there are multiple values and you are able to choose multiple values in out of that list. That's the reason we call it as multi-instance. Okay. So in that list of 200, I am able to select 3. I am able to use a multi-instance data type there. Then we have one more, which is called a single instance. That also behaves in the same way. You will get a drop down, you will get a list of values. But if it is single instance, you will only be able to choose only one value. You cannot choose more than one. If you have to choose more than one, then you will have to make that data type or field type as multi-instance. But if you are choosing, different things, you will not be able to choose more than one. Okay. Then we'll go to the next type, which is called as Boolean. Boolean means true or false, 0 or 1, right? So if we are putting a field type as Boolean, we can only put a value whether it is true or whether it is false. Then we have got 2 more things that I want to explain. I think there is currency. So every country in this world has its own currency, right? Now let's say you have set up a company which is in India. Then you set up the default currency as INR. But let's say it's a global company. It does not only operate in India. It uses a global currency. And let's say that the global currency which has been adopted by the company is dollar, USD. So you will choose the currency as USD as your default currency. You will not choose INR. Okay. So that makes it different. If you're working in Australia, you can choose Australian dollar. You can, if you're working in UK, you can choose British pound, or you are working in Europe, you can choose the currency of each country, or you can choose a common currency, which is euro. Okay. So what did we understand up till now? We started with text. We went into numeric. We understood date. We understood date and time. We understood single instance, we understood multi-instance, we understood Boolean, and we understood currency, right? So these are the 8 type of field that you will see in Workday, right? Apart from this, I don't think there is anything else, but in case if we encounter something, I will explain you at that time. I don't think there is anything. Single instance, multi-instance, we already understood, right? So every business object in Workday will have these 4 things available. And every business object will have this 4 tabs also. Not, if someone does not have a related business object, that is different, but they will have generally these 4 tabs. Okay. So fields are just like a column of a table. Okay. That is what you have to remember. Then comes the next part, which is related business object. So in this case, we have to understand related business object is more like a related table. So for example, I have employee table and I have salary table. Okay. So employee table will contain employee ID, employee name, date of birth, gender, date of hire, all those things, right? And your salary table, the salary table will contain it will also contain employee ID. So the employee ID becomes a common field between your employee table and your salary table, right? Now this employee ID is actually situated in employee table, but this is being used by salary table, which means there is a relationship between both the tables, right? Now, in common database terminology, we call this as a related table. But when it comes to Workday terminology, we call them as related business object. So business object is what? Table, related business object. Now you see there are 2 columns, links to and links from. Okay. So in the links to section, you see business objects and you see the number of links. So the number of links is nothing but the number of fields or columns which is common between this particular business object and this particular business object. So the business object to whom you are viewing, which you are looking, is basically your worker business object. Okay. So whatever we are looking into, it becomes the primary business object automatically. All right. Now, if I scroll it down, let's see, 26 is too much. Let's look into this one, which has 4. So academic appointment is the business object, and then the number of links is 4. Let's click on this. You see academic appointment title, academic appointment with sabbatical program, primary academic appointment. Now, who owns this business? Who owns this field? This is owned by worker. You see this? The left-hand side with the column is worker, and this field belongs to worker, but this is being used by academic appointment, and that's the reason academic appointment becomes a related business object. Okay. This is how exactly it is being used. So here, if academic appointment is my related business object, worker becomes as primary business object. We have not mentioned it, Workday has not mentioned it, but you have to think in this way. So whoever is owning the field is the primary business object. Whoever is using the field will become the related business object. Okay. Now the next part, when I say links to, okay, the next part is links from. It is exactly the opposite. So what we saw here, the fields which were of worker was being used by different business object, right? So why can't worker use the fields of different business object? That is also possible. So let's see this one, abstract business asset and asset share. There are 2 links. So in this case, what happens? The fields are issued to and requested. Now this field belongs to abstract business asset and asset share. This is being used by worker. So worker here becomes the related business object. So this is very important concept that we will be using when we will be creating reports. Okay. Next part is data source. Now, this is also very important concept. We will revisit this when we go into chapter 8, but as this is first chapter, I'm giving you a complete overview just to make sure that you understand these things so that when we go into chapter 8, things will be easier. Now, you see this number of fields here. It's 4,283. That's huge, right? It's too many. So if I have the fields, right, it is going to be very difficult if I have to search for one particular value, and if I have to move into 4,000 different fields, right, it will take time. And suppose your number of records, the number of values which you have is in millions and billions. So you will take a very long time to create or prepare a report, right? So for that purpose, what Workday has done, Workday has given a data source. So if I have to prepare a report, I need to remember or know the data source. I cannot prepare any report if I don't know the data source. So to know the data source, you need to know the name of the business object. And once you are able to get into the business object, then only you will know the data source. But because of practice, because of, visiting different business objects, you will keep on learning the data sources. This will come only through practice. But what is the concept of data source? Why it was actually introduced? We all know that Workday is on cloud, right? And on cloud, we always have to understand one important part, that whenever we are on cloud, resources will be shared, which means your CPU, any synchronous request that you put, that will have some time limit to execute something. Let's say you have been given 5 minutes. So if you say that, okay, please run this report, you will enter the report and you will try to click on it and you will run the report. So the request goes to the server. Server will have 5 minutes to execute it. If the data in the report is not being fetched within that 5 minutes, your report will time out. And it will give you an error that the report took too long time to execute. Please optimize this report so that you can run it again. So for optimization, for running the report faster, Workday has given this terminology, which is data source. So whenever we create any report, we will have to know the data source. And if you know the data source, the worker or any business object, that will automatically be linked with that report. You don't have to typically type the name of the business object, but what you have to type in the name of the data source. Now, what this data source does, it will contain fields of a limited quantity. Okay. It will have data filtered out. How? So when I say worker, worker contains all kind of employees. Your active employees also, your terminated employees also, your retired employees also, all that it will contain. But let's say I am only looking for data for active employees, right? And your company has more than 50,000 employees. And let's say only 10,000 are active, 40,000 have either been terminated or, they are retired. So the total strength right now of active employees, 10,000. But you had one time 50,000 employees, right? That could be possible. So I don't need that. So for that purpose, what I'll do, I will use a data source for active employees only, all active employees, or I will look for all active and terminated workers so that I can reduce the number of retired employees. What it will do, it will reduce the burden of those unwanted data, which I don't need in my report. Correct? And it will reduce the runtime of my report. So a report which was running in 4 minutes, it can, it can come and it can give me the data in 30 seconds if I'm able to remove that. So this is the use of data source. Now there are two types of data sources, guys. One which is called as standard and another which is called as indexed. So standard data source are those data source which is not mapped to a particular location. And indexed data sources are those which is actually mapped with a particular location. Now, how exactly it works, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a 2000 page book. Okay. So you're reading a book which has 2000 pages in that. And let's suppose you have to search a particular word. Okay. How will you know where in that book that particular word is? You will have to start from page 1 and you have to keep on searching till you find that word, right? That's the normal process you follow. But in a book, you would have seen there is a glossary or an index at the back of the book that with this alphabet, these are the words and you can find it on this page number, right? So what does that help you? You go into that glossary, you go to that location, you go to that page and you will find that word. So that is what indexing does in data source. It will add a location that, okay, I have to search that value. I'll go at that location. I'll fetch that value and my work is done. My report will run faster.